it's Jonathan McHugh, the Q in Q Score, and welcome back. We're very excited today to have Seasoned Kent. Seasoned just music supervisor, a little movie called The Fault in Our Stars, which has just revolutionized. It's a huge book, and it's the first soundtrack to unseat Frozen, which has been dominating the soundtrack charts for the last 3-4 months. So tell us about Fault in Your Stars and how the power all came together. And you know, these music's absolutely amazing. So just talk about the experience and your work on it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we had a beautiful book to start with, you know, and I think any project has a well-written book or a well-written script, like that's where the story starts. And then, you know, we had a great studio who wanted to do the book, and we had a great director and great producers.
How did you come into the equation?
The producers on this movie I've worked with before. I did Dear John with them. I do Revenge with them.
Right.
And you
Another
know,
tearjerker, Dear John.
Yes.
I remember that
specialty,
one.
I guess. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, they had, you know, were interested in me working on it, and the director I had never worked with before, and you know, we had a meeting, and he was, you know, met with other supervisors as well, and I don't know, we just hit it off, you know, and I think I just walked in and we just started talking about music, and the first thing he said to me was, he was really mad at me because this movie I worked on called The Spectacular Now.
Great
we
movie,
used, in title we used this song for Zula by Phosphorescent. And he had seen the movie and he like loved that song, and I walk in and he was like, I can't believe you used that song. I wanted to use that song in Fault, you know. So it was like, it just like set the tone for the meeting.
What's the director's name?
Josh Boone.
Okay.
It's his second movie, you know.
Wow.
He's done one, and
And what was his first?
Incredible. Stuck in Love. It's a film that came out about a year and a half ago. And he had great music in that movie. And I think that was another thing too. Like when I saw what he put in that, I was like, you know, we have really similar taste. And that was the first kind of things we talked about, was like, look, this is a really honest movie. We're not going to sugarcoat it. It's real. You know, these are people with, you know, real struggles in their life. And there's, you know, we just want to make sure that, you know, what we show the audience is, you know, nothing fake and nothing forced. So,
Right.
And the music's just part of telling the story. You know, it's not, you know, the montages were in the movie and things were there, but it was, you know, just an added support. You know.
And so who are the artists that you right away said, we want to go after these artists to write songs for this movie? And talk about that process of how difficult it can be sometimes, or easy, pinning down an artist to write a song. If they're really into it, it's like boom, but if not, it's still sometimes I got a tour, I'm doing this record, you know, talk about that.
Yeah,
what you got right away, and then let's build it up from there.
You know, at the beginning, I got in the movie so early, like before we started shooting, and Josh was like, let's go to this band, let's go to that band, you know, and at that point, all we had was a script. So, which is, you know, like reading a script and then getting footage of a movie are two different things, tonally.
Very much so, yeah.
And a band can read a script and tonally think what they thinks it should be, and then you get the song and you put its picture and it's not right at all, you know, which is kind of, at the beginning we were kind of going out to bands, and then we were like, you know what, we should wait until we have somewhat of an assembly so we can kind of figure out, you know, what do we need, you know, and what scenes actually are going to hold the weight of the emotion. And that was the other thing with the film, was that because it is so emotional, you can't start the beginning of the movie, or when something starts to get emotional in the movie, you can't have the saddest song. You've got to slowly kind of work your way to it, or you kind of blown the cover in a way.
Right.
So and where do you get to?
What was the first one you had written?
One of the first ones that we had written that was in the movie for a while, that is on the soundtrack, is the Lakeith Lee song. And you know, Josh and I are fans of her. I knew she was in the studio working on a record, and you know, we went out to her, and that day she went and bought the book, read the book, wrote a song, and sent it to us within like a week.
Amazing.
And we were like, this is amazing, you know. So we put it to picture and loved it for so long, and it was in the movie for so long, and then just by chance, and you know, once we started getting other songs and the way things shuffled around, it didn't make the cut in the film, but we loved it so much and we wanted to keep it, you know, and especially because she was so tied to it and she was so passionate about it, and lyrically it was so on point with the film. So.
And then Birdy also wrote for you?
Birdy wrote for us, and Birdy we were also super excited about, and you know, Atlantic, our soundtrack partners, who were amazing and helpful and getting their artists involved and just so passionate about the project in general.
To me, they're one of the best record labels in the
They
game.
were so amazing. I mean, Julie Greenwald, Kevin Weaver, like they wanted this so bad, and they understood our movie. You know, Julie, her daughter was a fan of the book, so she understood the passion and the fans, and And Kevin, did everything in his power to wrangle all of their artists and passionately sell the film. And it also, it's such a big book, and once we had artists see the movie, they got it. They wanted to be a part of it, which was, I think, that's something that's hard sometimes, when you want a band to write something and then they're not interested in it. With this one, we got really lucky because the material is so sweet and sad, and it really makes you think, about your life. I think that's the one thing about this movie that everyone's
Take
connected.
stock in how good you have it.
Yeah, and how you're living every day.
Right.
And which is why, 10, 12, 15-year-olds have read the book, 10 to 15 times.
Yeah, my daughter, I didn't even see the movie because she and my wife went first night, and I was out of town. I was like, well, so now what happened to me? I have to go by myself and be a weepy old guy?
Right. She's like, I'll go again.
Yeah. And Group Love. So talk about Group Love, being involved and doing a video. And
What's so great about Group Love was, again, in the movie, it's not like every song is a sad song. We needed energy, and there's bursts of excitement in this movie. And Group Love was a band that, Kevin was like, look, they're available, they're in LA, they're really interested, let's have them see the movie. So they came to Fox, they saw the movie, we met with them afterwards, Patrick at Fox, Kevin. Kevin Weaver was with us, their manager and the whole band, and we just, talked about the movie and like what kind of song they'd want to write, and we kind of already had in mind a scene for them, but the scene that we picked was the scene that really needed to be crafted and scored almost. And it was like we watched the scene with them, and it was more like, okay, we need a build here, and we need a hit on the picture cut here, and then we need it to explode when we see Gus coming out of the limo, which is like this one scene where we find out that they're going to go to Amsterdam, and Gus has come to pick her up, and he comes and picks her up in a limo, and his body's like outside the sunroof, and they totally nailed it. They actually wrote 2 songs for us, and we had a hard time picking which one we wanted because we liked them both.
Well, that's great. That's an embarrassment of riches to be able to pick, as opposed to like, we like that song. Okay, it's all right.
Yeah, or like having notes on it. We didn't have any notes.
Right.
And I think that's a rare thing too. Like sometimes, some bands, I think, visually, cinematically can understand what needs to happen, and they really got it. It's Trevor Rabin's like son. I always say.
So I used to do another show here called The Weekly Comet, and Trevor was on the show. And he was saying, my son's in this band, and he met these guys in Greece, I think it was, he was saying, or I forget. I was like, what's a band called? Group Love. I was like, your son is in Group Love? I was like, that's amazing.
And he's their producer. He produces the band.
Kid, right? Yeah, so he obviously learned some stuff
Brian's
from...
name.
Brian, right. So Brian obviously learned some stuff by watching Trevor score huge movies over the last 15 years or whatever it was.
And they're really talented. And
I love them.
The Christian and Hannah, the songwriters, they're married couple, and they sang together and they wrote together, and the song starts off with Hannah singing, which I love, which is so great because it's over our female character, and it was just a home run, that song. We love it.
And so the soundtrack, again, as I said, debuted the #2 album in the country. What was the #1 album that week? Do you remember?
I think it's Coldplay.
Okay, not bad. Now Coldplay.
Kevin Weaver was very happy that week.
Coldplay, I think, would be a good kind of band for this movie. Did you guys ever go down that road at all?
We did. And Chris actually saw the movie and
he did.
Loved it.
He loved it.
Yeah,
he's a sensitive kind of fella.
Yeah, it was really sweet, and it was just like
coming
kind
out
of by
at the same
chance
time as their album, right?
Yeah, it was the same time as their album, and it's as anything in film, it's there's a lot of people making decisions, and I think we were just trying to make sure what's honest and best for the film, and I think we would have been so happy to have Coldplay, and that they were kind of on their own journey, and we were on our own journey too, and but we were so fortunate that they actually considered us and wanted to see the movie.
Yeah, no,
it was a big deal.
Your movie and book, these things that come along every once in a while, whether it's Hunger Games or Twilight, they appeal to this young base, and that's what Hollywood is craving for, those book series or books that just really appeal to those 16, 15, 12-year-old daughter, that I have.
Yeah.
And I was shocked, they had left the book on the side of my bed. Because my daughter was reading in bed, and I didn't even know about it. It was like, wow, how did I miss this?
Yeah.
And it's just so weird how that demographic, but that drives movie tickets.
Yeah, completely.
Because they still are passionate about going to the movies a lot.
And they connect, I think that's what's so, it's, from a musical standpoint, they really not only connect to the story, but the music, and they're running, I feel like that's why our album sales are doing so great, they're really, really, really connected to the music.
And what other singles do you have planned for the record?
Birdy's Not About Angels, actually, which is the song she wrote for the movie, and it's in the movie. which initially I don't know if we were going to go out with that one for a single, because she ended up writing 3 songs for the movie.
Wow, she got really inspired.
Really inspired. 2 of them she did with Dan Wilson.
Who's a great
and
writer.
he's amazing.
Amazing,
yeah,
right?
Such a
Semisonic.
sweet guy.
Used to work with him back in the day.
But so one of her songs, T-shirt, that she did with Dan was going to be the single, which we did a video for, and then, which I think it is out there as a single, but Not About Angels kind of took off. It's a really emotional scene in the movie, and it's this beautiful song she wrote. And she saw the movie, she wrote the song, she went home like that night, wrote the song, sent us a demo, super rough demo, I think, that she did in GarageBand. You know, she did the whole like a string arrangement on it. And it's stunning. And then, you know, she went in to record it for real, and, you know, had, you know, string players in, and it's so beautiful. It's like,
Yeah, her
it's a really
version
timeless
of,
song, you know. It's,
her version of Skinny Love is
oh,
just,
she's
shivers.
chilling. And she's, you know, just sounds just like that live. I mean, she's
Right.
a real talent. And
Yeah, I haven't seen her live.
what was so cool about her, too, is that she's 17.
Is she really? Birdy 17? British, right?
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah,
she's
that's
such the
amazing.
demographic of this movie, and connects so well with, you know, characters and the fans. You know, it worked out really, really well.
So some of the new stuff you work in TV, so you have really done a nice balance of TV and film, which I think
Yeah.
is really hard to do. I've primarily done films, but I'm always admire people even more who can balance that work, because TV is such a heavy grind.
Yeah.
It's like constant every week. You need to deliver. So you're on a couple shows right now. Tyrant is one we discussed, which is getting an incredible amount of press
Yeah.
and promo, written by one of the greatest writers out there, Howard Gordon, who's an old friend of mine, and who's written stuff like Homeland and 24, is just a brilliant writer. Talk about that show, shot in the Middle East. What are you using musically on that one?
Yeah, you know, that one, it's such a, even though the country that the movie or the show is set in is a fictional place, you know, it's really shot in reality. So I think musically it's, you know, what is playing in this club? What is this person listening to in their car? You know, I think nothing's montage or fantasy. It's like, let's keep it as real as possible. So, and there's been a lot of ethnic stuff, you know, call to prayer, you know, a lot of, you know, things that we've had to really research and make sure this is public domain, or can we use this, or what are they actually singing? What is this drum loop that they found? You know, it's been kind of cool because they've found like all these local people, so it's just a matter
Arabic drum loops.
yeah, just to making sure that we can clear it, basically. But yeah, the show's, it's exciting, you know, and I'm such a fan of Howard and Homeland, and, you know, it's really exciting to be a part of it.
That's great. And what's the other show you're on now?
Summer show I have right now, Mistresses on ABC, season 2. We were on last summer, and it's just a really fun show. It's like, yeah, I use a ton of songs.
What type of vibe?
Emotional, like sexy kind of stuff. You know, montage. It's great. Like that one, you know, I have a really
And how do you
fun.
like
Mostly
to-
female vocal.
How do you like to process music as far as you're inundated with music, you're always working, you're focused on trying to get the songs, but yet you need music.
Yeah.
But yet, you know, do you have what I call go-to guys, sources that you always count on? It's like, I need this, and, you know, I need this sounds like this, and it's got to be like this. And how do you
Yeah.
process all that?
Yeah,
What does that take?
you know, there definitely is like the people that have, you know, a bulk of things that I love and that's my taste and things I like. It's a matter of just like going through it and listening to it. And you know, when you're on a show or a film or whatever your needs are, you're kind of like in that world. So when I was on Fault, it was, you know, the time I was doing Fault, I also do Revenge. So for Revenge, it's, you know, haunting female vocal, dark kind of stuff. And then Fault was very emotional singer-songwriter. So I was just in that world. If you asked me like what's going on in hip hop, I would be like, I have no idea,
Right,
you know, because I haven't been listening to it.
And
you
that's
know?
what I tell artists, you know, when you do
Yeah.
panels and stuff, and artists are like, well, how do I get my music? And I said, well, first of all, you need to research the
What
supervisor.
the person's working on. Yeah.
And what are they working on? So
Yeah.
if she's working on Revenge and Fault, well, you know, don't send her hip hop. Send her the moody female driving type of
Exactly.
things
Completely.
and figure that out. But a lot of people just, it's interesting how everybody wants it, but the question is, do they understand how to
Yeah.
go get it?
Yeah. And there's a fine line too of, especially, you know, Revenge for a while was, you know, people would send stuff and, you know, like what they thought was dark and haunting female vocal, and it's not. It's really specific, you know. I think a lot of things, you know, some things can be very specific, some things not as specific, you know.
Right.
But yeah, and then Revenge will be back in the fall. And I'm finishing up a movie called Fury right now. World War II,
Oh, that's
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. So tell us about that. That's a high. Anything Brad Pitt is in, it's a high profile. What's the story on that?
You know,
film?
this one, David Ayer wrote and directed it.
Tremendous
I've
writer.
worked on all of his projects, and he's such a real raw, you know, writer director. And this story was completely very close to him. And he's been wanting to make this movie for a very long time. It all takes place in a tank. It takes place in a tank. So Brad Pitt's
the whole movie.
Yeah, and it's
can you
like
have
the
music in a
last
tank?
year. Well, we're using like it's kind of cool because we're using like early '40s stuff, but he wanted more like the country vibe, like early '40s
Hank
country.
Williams, early Hank?
Yeah. So Mills Brothers, he wanted. It's interesting, but
That's
it's
cool.
more of a score movie for sure. Stephen
Sure.
Price, who won the Oscar for.
Oh wow.
Oh my God, why am I blanking right now? Anyway, he's doing it. So, and the score is really interesting. It's a lot
How
of
would you describe it?
singing. It's very dark and haunting, but he's using a lot of vocals, like throat singing. So, just kind of like, as David would always describe, he's like the depths of hell. Like think about where these guys are and what they're
Right.
experiencing and how they came into this so fresh-faced. And there's like one main character where you kind of see his arc of, coming in so green.
Right.
At the end of it, kind of broken and emotional and kind of grown up. He's become a man.
So going back to the beginning, you came up under John Houlihan,
Mm-hmm.
who's a good friend of ours and has done great work. And
I owe John everything.
yeah, so I mean, but you've matured into this, in 8 years, whatever it's been, you've matured into this amazing player who's doing great stuff. Talk about what you think it takes to be a great music supervisor and to juggle all these different publishers, labels, directors, producers, studios. I mean, there's 8 things you have to be really good at to be able to do it. What talk about what your advice is for other people coming up.
I mean, I think passion, I think being a music fan are obvious things. But, knowing that, I always think of this sometimes, it's like I'm a service job. I'm not the ultimate say-so. My director, my producer are. So my job is to try to give them anything and everything they want and need, and if they want to change their mind 50 times, great, that's fine. I'll just pitch them and keep pitching them and keep sending the music and, and going after clearance-wise, the one thing John always taught me was like, there's never, we don't take no. Like we always try really hard to get what we can. And if we can't get it, at least we knew we tried every single angle possible to make it happen for our client, period.
Right.
So I think that's a lot of it. And, I think being excited, we're the music people. So it's like when we walk into a room, people, they love talking to us, they love talking music.
Harlan Goodman, who used to have, who used to run the music at Paramount Picture, had a great line. It was, everybody has 2 jobs at the studio, the film studio, and one of them is
One is music, yes, of course.
Right. But everybody loves music, and I like to have my favorite music in this movie,
Yeah.
and that's always like, you have to be that political. You can't say, oh, that's a bad idea. You have to say, yeah, let's look at it. It's like the politics and the nuance. It's a nuanced business in a way.
It is, yeah.
Because you have to get along with the editor, the producer, the director, the studio.
Completely.
It's really interesting in that sense.
Yeah, it's a personality thing. It's, and I think having a good attitude, and